The day Olivia Davies buried her stillborn daughter in the hard Nebraska earth. Something inside her went as cold and silent as the tiny body wrapped in white linen. Valentine, Nebraska had seen its share of sorrows in 1883. But there was something particularly devastating about watching a young woman of 22 stand beside that impossibly small grave with eyes that seemed to look straight through the world into some distant, colorless void. Her husband had left 2 months before the baby was due, riding off with a saloon girl and whatever money they had saved, leaving Olivia to work at the general store and prepare for motherhood alone. The women of Valentine had rallied around her, bringing blankets and baby clothes, whispering encouragements that everything would be fine. But nothing had been fine. After 3 days of labor, the midwife had finally delivered a perfect little girl who never took a single breath, and Olivia had not smiled, laughed, or shown any expression beyond a terrible emptiness since that moment. Vincent Reeves had been passing through Valentine when he saw the funeral, a lone cowboy who had spent the last 5 years driving cattle from Texas to Montana and everywhere in between. He was 26, weathered by sun and wind, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water in summer. Something about that small grave and the young woman's absolute stillness made him rein in his horse and remove his hat, standing at a respectful distance while the preacher said words that seemed to disappear into the autumn air without making any impact at all. He did not know why he stayed in Valentine that night, or why he took a job at the lumber mill the next morning, or why he found himself walking past the general store 3 times a day just to catch a glimpse of the woman with the dead eyes who moved through her work like a ghost inhabiting its own life. Olivia hardly noticed him at first. She hardly noticed anything. She woke before dawn in the small room behind the general store that her employer, Mrs. Henderson, had let her take when her husband left. She dressed in the same black mourning dress she had worn since the burial. She opened the store, helped customers, restocked shelves, swept floors, closed the store, ate whatever Mrs. Henderson brought her, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling until exhaustion finally dragged her into dreamless sleep. The world had become a series of movements to be completed, tasks to be finished, hours to be endured. The other women tried to talk to her to offer comfort, but their words slid off her like rain off oilcloth. What could they say? That God had a plan, that she would heal in time, that she could have other children. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered. Her baby had been born still and silent, and Olivia felt like she had been born still and silent right alongside her. Vincent did not try to talk to her at first. He simply made sure she saw him. He would come into the general store to buy tobacco or coffee, and he would nod politely, say his please and thank yous, and leave without any attempt at conversation beyond the necessary. But he came every day, always clean despite his work at the mill, always respectful, always with that steady presence that asked for nothing. After 2 weeks, he started buying flowers from the woman who grew them in her greenhouse, and he would leave them on the steps of the general store before dawn, tied with simple twine, never with a note. Olivia would find them when she opened the store, and for the first few days, she simply threw them away. But Mrs. Henderson rescued them, putting them in water, placing them on the counter where their colors were an almost offensive brightness against the drab interior. "That Reeves boy is sweet on you," Mrs. Henderson said one morning, arranging a bunch of late-season chrysanthemums in a mason jar. She was a round woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the blunt manner of someone who had lived through enough hardship to know that tiptoeing around pain did not make it hurt less. Olivia was counting bolts of fabric and did not look up. "I do not want anyone sweet on me." I did not ask what you wanted. I am just telling you what is." Mrs. Henderson set the jar on the counter with a decisive thump. "That man has been leaving flowers every morning for a week and a half. He works hard at the mill, does not drink away his pay, and from what I hear, he is decent and kind. There are worse things than having someone care about you. There are worse things than being alone too." Olivia's voice was flat, without inflection. "My husband cared about me until he did not." "Caring does not mean anything." Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "Your husband was a fool and a coward, Olivia, but not every man is him. And being alone when you are drowning in grief is not strength. It is just another way of giving up." Olivia did not respond. She finished counting the fabric, wrote the numbers in the ledger, and moved on to the next task. But something about Mrs. Henderson's words stuck in her mind like a burr, irritating and impossible to ignore. Was she drowning? She did not feel like she was drowning. She did not feel like she was anything. She was just existing, moving through the world without touching it, and that seemed like the only possible way to continue. That afternoon, Vincent came into the store just before closing. The light was golden and slanted through the windows, catching dust motes in the air and turning them into tiny sparks. He stood by the door for a moment, hat in his hands, and when Olivia finally looked up from the account books, he spoke. "I know you do not know me, and I know you have no reason to care what I think," he said, his voice low and rough from years of shouting over cattle and wind. "But I saw you at the funeral, and I have seen you every day since, and I just want you to know that I am sorry. I am sorry for your loss, and I am sorry that you are hurting, and I know there is nothing I can say that will make any difference, but I wanted to say it anyway." Olivia stared at him. Most people avoided mentioning the baby directly, dancing around it with euphemisms and platitudes. But Vincent's words were simple and honest, acknowledging the reality of her loss without trying to minimize it or make it easier to bear. She felt something crack inside her chest, just the tiniest fissure in the ice that had formed around her heart. "Thank you," she said, and her voice sounded strange to her own ears, as if she had not used it in a very long time. "That is kind of you to say." Vincent nodded, turning his hat in his hands. "I lost my younger brother when I was 18. He was only 12, drowned in a river during spring flooding. I remember thinking that nothing would ever be right again, that the world was just this terrible place where bad things happened for no reason. I was angry for a long time. Angry at God, angry at my parents for not watching him closer, angry at myself for not being there. But eventually, I realized that being angry was just another way of holding on to him, and that I had to let him go if I was ever going to really live again." "I do not want to let her go," Olivia said, and suddenly there were tears in her eyes for the first time since the burial, hot and painful. "She is all I have. If I let her go, I have nothing." "You have yourself," Vincent said quietly. "And that has to be enough, even when it does not feel like it is." He left then, before Olivia could respond, and she stood alone in the store with tears running down her face and her hands shaking. She cried for the first time since her daughter's death. Great wrenching sobs that seemed to tear something loose inside her. And when she was finally empty, she felt lighter somehow, as if she had been carrying a weight she had not known was there. The next morning she did not throw away the flowers. Vincent did not push. He continued to leave flowers, continued to come into the store, but he also started doing small things that were impossible to ignore. When a wagon wheel broke in front of the store, he fixed it. When Mrs. Henderson mentioned that the store's back door was sticking, he planed it down and rehung it. When Olivia struggled to move a heavy crate of canned goods, he appeared out of nowhere to lift it for her, setting it exactly where she needed it without a word. He never asked for thanks or acknowledgement. He simply helped, then went on his way, and Olivia found herself watching for him, found herself noticing the way he moved with an easy strength, the way he was unfailingly polite to everyone, the way he seemed to carry his own sorrows quietly without inflicting them on others. One evening in late October, when the air had turned cold and the leaves were falling from the cottonwoods in golden showers, Vincent was walking past the store just as Olivia was locking up. He paused, as he always did, and tipped his hat. "Evening, Miss Davies. Miss Reeves." She hesitated, clutching her shawl around her shoulders. "I wanted to thank you for the flowers and for all the help. You have been very kind. No need for thanks. I am just glad to do it." He started to walk on, then stopped. "There is a barn dance on Saturday night at the Johnsons' place. I know you are in mourning, and I am not suggesting anything improper, but if you wanted to get out of that room for a few hours, I would be honored to escort you. We would not have to dance or anything. We could just sit and listen to the music, maybe have some of Mrs. Johnson's apple cake. She makes the best in the county." Olivia's first instinct was to refuse. She was in mourning. It would not be proper. People would talk. But then she thought about another evening alone in her room, staring at the walls, counting the cracks in the ceiling, and something in her rebelled against it. "I would like that," she heard herself say. "Thank you." Vincent's face lit up with a smile that transformed him from weathered cowboy to someone much younger and more vulnerable. "Really? That is wonderful. I will come by around 7 if that suits you." 7 is fine." She watched him walk away with a spring in his step that had not been there before, and she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not happiness, not yet, but maybe the memory of what happiness felt like phantom sensation in a limb you thought you had lost. The barn dance was the first time Olivia had been in a social gathering since the funeral, and she felt painfully conspicuous in her black dress among all the bright colors and laughter. But Vincent stayed close, a steady presence at her side, and he kept his word. They did not dance. They sat on hay bales at the edge of the barn, and listened to the fiddle music, and watched the other couples whirl and spin in the lamplight. He brought her apple cake and cider, and he told her stories about his life on the cattle drives, the funny things and the beautiful things, carefully avoiding anything dark or sad. He told her about the time a longhorn steer developed a fondness for one of the cowboy's hats and would steal it every chance he got. He told her about seeing the Rocky Mountains for the first time, how they rose up like a wall at the edge of the world. He told her about the songs the cowboys would sing at night around the campfire, silly songs and sad songs and songs that made you believe in something bigger than yourself. Olivia listened, and slowly, gradually, she found herself relaxing, found herself almost smiling at his stories. Not quite smiling, but something close to it, a softening around her eyes and mouth that felt foreign and familiar all at once. "Why did you stop?" she asked when they were riding back to town in his borrowed wagon, the stars sharp and bright overhead. "Driving cattle, I mean." "It sounds like you loved it." Vincent was quiet for a moment, the reins loose in his hands. "I did love it. But it is a young man's life, hard and lonely. I am 26 now, and I started thinking about what comes next. I have some money saved, enough to buy a small ranch if I can find the right piece of land. I want to build something permanent, something that lasts. The drives are about movement, always moving, never settling. I think I am ready to settle. In Valentine, maybe. I like it here. It is a good town, good people, and there is something here worth staying for." He did not look at her when he said it, but Olivia felt the weight of his meaning, and she did not know what to say. Part of her wanted to tell him not to stay for her, that she was broken and might never be whole again. But another part, a smaller, quieter part, was glad he was staying, glad that someone saw something in her worth staying for. Over the following weeks, Vincent became a constant in Olivia's life. He would walk her home from the store in the evenings, and they would talk about everything and nothing. He told her about his family back in Missouri, his parents and 3 sisters, all still alive and well. She told him about growing up in a small farming community in Iowa, about her father dying when she was 16 and her mother remarrying a man who did not want a grown stepdaughter around. She even told him about her husband, the way he had been charming and attentive during their courtship, then gradually become distant and cruel after the wedding, blaming her for everything that went wrong, making her feel small and worthless. "He was wrong," Vincent said fiercely when she finished. "You are not worthless. You are strong and brave, and you have survived things that would have broken most people. Do not let his voice in your head tell you any different." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes again, but they were different tears this time, born of gratitude and something else she could not quite name. "I do not feel strong. I feel like I am barely holding on. Holding on is strength. Getting up every morning and going through the day when everything in you wants to give up, that is the hardest kind of strength there is." He stopped walking and turned to face her, his eyes serious in the moonlight. "You are still here, Olivia. You are still fighting. That counts for something." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that she was more than just her grief, more than just the woman whose baby had been born still. And when she was with Vincent, it almost seemed possible. As November arrived and the weather turned bitter, Vincent started spending more time at the store during his lunch breaks from the mill. He would help Olivia with the heavier work, moving barrels and crates, chopping kindling for the stove, carrying water from the well. Mrs. Henderson watched with approval, and the other townspeople began to accept their friendship. The scandal of a mourning woman being courted fading in the face of Vincent's obvious decency and Olivia's gradual return to life. One cold afternoon, a customer came in with her infant son, a fat, healthy baby who gurgled and smiled at everyone. Olivia froze when she saw him, her face going pale, and Vincent saw her hands start to shake. The customer was oblivious, chatting about nothing while her baby waved his fists in the air, and Olivia mechanically gathered the woman's order, her movements stiff and wooden. As soon as the customer left, Olivia's knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Vincent had not caught her. He guided her to a chair and knelt beside her, holding her cold hands in his warm ones. "Breathe," he said softly. "Just breathe, Olivia. You are all right. You are safe." "I cannot do this," she gasped, her chest tight and painful. "I cannot see babies and pretend it does not hurt. I cannot smile and be happy and act like everything is fine when my daughter is dead. I cannot." "You do not have to pretend anything is fine," Vincent said, his voice steady and calm. "You do not have to smile if you do not feel like smiling. You do not have to be anything other than what you are right now. But you also cannot let the pain win, Olivia. You cannot let it take everything from you." "It already has," she whispered. "It took my baby, and it took every good thing I ever believed about the world. What is left to take? Your future, your chance at happiness, your life." He squeezed her hands gently. "I know it does not seem possible right now, but there is still good in the world, Olivia. There is still beauty and joy and love. Your daughter's death does not erase those things. It just makes them harder to see for a while." "How do you know?" she asked, searching his face. "How do you know it gets better?" "Because I have lived through it. Because I have seen other people live through it. Because I look at you and I see someone who is fighting so hard to survive, and that fight means something. It means you are not ready to give up, even if it feels like you are." Olivia closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I do not know how to be happy anymore. I do not even know how to want to be happy." "Then let me want it for you." Vincent said quietly. "Let me want it until you can want it yourself. Let me show you that there are still things in this world worth living for." She opened her eyes and looked at him, this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray. "Why do you care so much? You do not even know me." "I want to know you," he said simply. "I want to know everything about you. I want to know your favorite color, and what makes you laugh, and what you dream about when you let yourself dream. I want to know you in sunshine and in sorrow, in good days and bad days. And I am willing to wait as long as it takes for you to be ready to let me in." Something in Olivia's chest cracked wide open, and suddenly she was crying in earnest, the kind of deep, cleansing tears that seemed to wash away some of the darkness inside her. Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully, as if she were something precious and fragile, and she let herself be held, let herself take comfort from his warmth and strength. When she finally stopped crying, she pulled back just enough to look at him. "My favorite color is blue," she said, her voice hoarse. "The color of the sky right after dawn when it is so pale it is almost white." Vincent smiled, a slow, warm smile that reached his eyes. "Mine is green, the color of spring grass when the rains have been good." It was a small thing, this exchange of favorite colors, but it felt like a beginning, like the first tentative step on a very long road. And for the first time since her daughter's death, Olivia thought maybe, just maybe, she could walk that road. Not alone, but with this quiet, steady man who had made it his mission to find her joy again. As winter set in, and snow began to fall on Valentine, Vincent and Olivia's relationship deepened. They were not courting, not exactly, because Olivia was still in mourning and was not ready for anything that felt like romance. But they were something, some undefined thing that was more than friendship and less than love, or maybe it was love already, just a different kind than either of them had known before. It was the love of two wounded people finding shelter in each other, recognizing their own pain reflected back and choosing to face it together rather than alone. Vincent started bringing her small gifts, never anything expensive or elaborate, just little things he thought she might like. A book of poetry from the traveling salesman, a pair of warm gloves he had bought from the leather worker, a jar of honey from a local beekeeper. Olivia accepted them with a shy gratitude that made Vincent's heart ache, because he could see how unused she was to being treated with kindness, how her husband's abandonment and cruelty had made her doubt her own worth. One evening in early December, they were sitting in the store after closing, the stove glowing warm against the cold outside. Olivia was mending a tear in her cloak, and Vincent was whittling a piece of wood, the shavings curling away from his knife in long, delicate ribbons. "What are you making?" Olivia asked, watching his hands move with practiced ease. "A bird, a meadowlark, I think, or trying to anyway. I am not much of a carver. It looks good to me." She set down her mending and moved closer to see better. "You have done this before. My father taught me when I was a boy. He used to carve toys for us, little animals and wagons. I have not done it in years, but I thought." He hesitated, then continued. "I thought I might make something for your daughter's grave, if you would not mind, just something to mark it, to say that she was here and mattered." Olivia's breath caught, and for a moment she could not speak. No one had mentioned her daughter in weeks, everyone tiptoeing around the subject as if it had never happened. But Vincent spoke of it plainly, acknowledging the reality of her loss and the reality of her daughter's brief existence. "I would like that very much," she said finally. "Thank you, Vincent. That is the kindest thing anyone has ever offered to do for me." He looked up from his carving, his eyes soft. "She was your daughter. She deserves to be remembered." They sat in companionable silence for a while longer, and then Vincent said, "Tell me about her. Tell me what you were going to name her, what you dreamed for her." Olivia had not talked about this with anyone, had kept it locked inside where it felt like a burning coal in her chest. But with Vincent, she found she could speak of it, could let the words out without feeling like they would destroy her. "I was going to name her Grace," she said softly. "Grace Elizabeth, after my grandmother. I dreamed she would be strong and smart and kind. I dreamed she would grow up knowing she was loved, that she would never doubt her worth the way I have doubted mine. I dreamed of teaching her to read and to sew and to bake bread. I dreamed of watching her fall in love someday, of holding her children. I dreamed of all the things mothers dream, all the ordinary, beautiful things. Those are good dreams," Vincent said. "And even though they did not come true the way you wanted, they still matter. You loved her. That love is real, even if she never knew it." "You think she knew?" Olivia asked, and her voice was almost childlike in its hope. "Do you think she knew I loved her, even though she never lived?" "I think love is bigger than life and death," Vincent said. "I think she knew, and I think wherever she is now, she still knows." Olivia felt something ease in her chest, some tight knot of guilt and grief loosening just slightly. She had been carrying the fear that her daughter had died not knowing she was wanted, not knowing she was loved, and Vincent's words, simple as they were, gave her a measure of peace. That night, when Vincent walked her back to her room, he paused at the door and said, "I know this is not the time, and I am not asking for an answer now, but I need you to know that I am falling in love with you, Olivia. I am falling in love with your strength and your courage and the way you keep fighting even when everything in you wants to give up. And when you are ready, when enough time has passed and you can think about the future again, I hope you will let me court you properly. I hope you will give me the chance to make you happy." Olivia looked at him, this good, kind man who had walked into her life at its darkest moment and refused to let her drown. "I do not know if I can love anyone again," she said honestly. "I do not know if there is anything left in me that is not broken." "Then we will find out together," Vincent said. "But for now, just know that I am here and I am not going anywhere, and I think you are worth waiting for." He kissed her forehead, gentle and chaste, and then he was gone, walking away into the snowy night, and Olivia stood at her door with her fingers pressed to where his lips had been, feeling something she thought she might never feel again: hope. Christmas came, and with it a softening in Olivia that even she could not deny. Vincent had finished carving the meadowlark, and on Christmas morning, they walked together to the cemetery and placed it on Grace's grave. It was a beautiful piece of work, the bird captured in mid-song, its wings spread as if ready to take flight. Vincent had carved tiny feathers and delicate legs, and the whole thing had a lifelike quality that made Olivia's heart hurt in a bittersweet way. "She would have loved it," Olivia said, tracing the bird's outline with one finger. "Thank you, Vincent. This means more to me than I can say." "She was loved," Vincent said, placing his hand over Olivia's. "That is what matters. She was loved and she will be remembered." They stood together in the cold, the snow falling softly around them, and Olivia felt something shift inside her. It was not that the grief was gone. It would never be gone, not completely. But it was no longer the only thing she felt. There was also gratitude and affection, and the tiniest spark of something that might, someday, become joy again. As winter deepened, Valentine was hit by a series of blizzards that made travel nearly impossible and kept everyone huddled close to their stoves. Vincent could not always make it to the store, and Olivia found that she missed him on those days, missed his steady presence and his quiet humor. On the days he did come, often arriving half-frozen despite his heavy coat and scarf, she would make him hot coffee and fuss over him in a way that felt both strange and natural, as if some part of her was learning how to care for someone again. One evening, they were trapped at the store by a sudden storm, the wind howling so fiercely that Vincent refused to let Olivia try to walk the short distance to her room. Mrs. Henderson had already gone home before the storm hit, and they were alone, the store lit only by the stove and a single lamp. Vincent built up the fire and made a bed of blankets on the floor for Olivia, insisting she take them while he would make do with his coat. "Do not be ridiculous," Olivia said, her cheeks flushed from the warmth. "There are enough blankets for both of us, and we are both adults. We can share the space without impropriety." Vincent looked uncertain, but the storm showed no signs of abating, and he was tired from a long day at the mill. They arranged the blankets on opposite sides of the stove, maintaining a careful distance, and lay down in the flickering firelight. For a long time neither spoke, listening to the wind shriek and moan around the building. "Vincent," Olivia said finally, her voice small in the darkness. "Yes." "I think I am starting to heal. I think you are helping me heal. You are healing yourself," he said gently. "I am just here to remind you that you can. It is more than that." She was quiet for a moment, gathering her courage. "I have been so afraid. Afraid to feel anything good, because feeling good means admitting that life goes on even after loss. It feels like a betrayal, like I am saying her death does not matter if I can still be happy." "Her death matters," Vincent said, his voice firm. "It will always matter. But your life matters too, Olivia. You are allowed to grieve and you are allowed to heal. You are allowed to remember her and still have a future. Those things are not mutually exclusive." "How did you become so wise?" she asked, and there was a hint of something in her voice that might have been amusement, might have been affection. "I am not wise. I just know what it is like to carry grief and how easy it is to let it crush you if you are not careful." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking at her across the space between them. "You are allowed to be happy again, Olivia. You are allowed to smile and laugh and love. Grace would want that for you. Any mother would want that for her child, and I think any child would want that for her mother." Olivia felt tears slide down her temples and into her hair, but they were soft tears, gentle tears. "I wish she could have known you. I wish she could have had you as a father." Vincent's breath caught, and in the firelight she could see the emotion on his face. "I wish that too. But maybe someday, if you let me, I can be a father to other children. Your children, our children." It was the most direct he had ever been about his hopes for their future, and Olivia felt her heart pound in her chest. It was too soon, her rational mind said. She was still in mourning. People would talk, but her heart, her battered, wounded heart, said something different. It said that Vincent Reeves was a good man, maybe the best man she would ever know, and that life was too short and too uncertain to waste time worrying about what other people thought. "Ask me again in the spring," she said softly. "When the mourning period is over and the world is green again. Ask me then, and I will give you an answer. I will ask you every spring for the rest of my life if that is what it takes," Vincent said. And there was such conviction in his voice that Olivia believed him. They fell asleep like that, on opposite sides of the stove but connected by something stronger than proximity. And when Olivia woke in the night, shivering from a dream she could not quite remember, Vincent was there, wrapping another blanket around her shoulders and murmuring reassurances until she drifted back to sleep. It was the first time since Grace's death that she had felt truly safe. As January turned to February, Olivia began to change in ways that were visible to everyone in Valentine. She did not smile yet, not quite, but the terrible emptiness had left her eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. She started taking better care of herself, wearing colors other than black, pinning her hair up in pretty styles instead of just pulling it back severely. She started humming while she worked, old songs her mother had taught her, and Mrs. Henderson declared it a miracle and gave full credit to Vincent Reeves. Vincent, for his part, was walking on air. Every small sign of Olivia's healing felt like a personal victory, and he poured himself into his work at the mill and his growing plans for a ranch with a new energy. He started looking at land, riding out on Sundays to explore the areas around Valentine, looking for the right piece of property. He wanted something with good grass and water, enough room for cattle and horses, and a spot where a house could be built with a view of the sunrise. He wanted to build something worthy of Olivia, something that would make her feel safe and loved for the rest of her life. In late February, Vincent asked Olivia to go riding with him on Sunday to see a piece of land he was considering. It was the first time she had been on a horse since before Grace's birth, and she was nervous, but Vincent helped her mount and stayed close, ready to catch her if she faltered. They rode out into the Nebraska countryside, the land still brown and dormant, but with a sense of waiting, of potential ready to burst forth. The land Vincent wanted to show her was about 5 miles outside of town, a beautiful stretch of rolling prairie with a creek running through it, and a small grove of cottonwood trees that would provide shade in summer. He helped Olivia down from her horse and walked her to the highest point where you could see for miles in every direction. "This is it," he said, his voice full of quiet pride. "This is where I want to build. The house would go right here, facing east so you can watch the sun come up. There is good water in the creek, and the grass is rich. I have enough saved to buy it and start building, and the mill owner says I can keep working until I get the ranch established." Olivia looked around, seeing what he saw, imagining a house and barn and corrals, imagining cattle grazing and horses running. "It is beautiful," she said. "It is perfect, Vincent." "I am glad you think so," he said, and there was something nervous in his voice now, something hopeful and vulnerable. "Because I am not just imagining myself here, Olivia. I am imagining us, you and me and the family we could build together. I know it is only February and I said I would wait until spring, but I cannot wait any longer. I love you, Olivia Davies. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" Olivia turned to look at him, this man who had saved her life without her even realizing she needed saving. She thought about how he had been patient and kind and steady when she had nothing to give him in return. She thought about how he had made space for her grief, instead of trying to fix it or rush her through it. She thought about how he had loved her when she was at her very worst, when she was broken and bitter and barely alive, and how he had never asked her to be anything other than exactly what she was. "Yes," she said, and as she said it, she felt something happen that she thought might never happen again. Her lips curved upward just the smallest amount, but unmistakably. It was not a full smile, not yet, but it was the beginning of one, the first smile since Grace had been born still. "Yes, Vincent, I will marry you." Vincent let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "You are smiling," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Olivia, you are smiling." "I know," she said, and she was crying too, but they were happy tears this time, tears of relief and gratitude and the beginning of joy. "I know. You did it, Vincent. You brought me back." "We brought you back," he corrected, pulling back to look at her face, memorizing the sight of that small, precious smile. "You are the one who chose to keep fighting. You are the one who chose to live. I just gave you a reason." They stood there on the wind-swept prairie, holding each other as the sun moved across the sky, and for the first time since Grace's death, Olivia felt like she had a future again, like there were still good things waiting for her in this world. It did not erase the past. It did not bring her daughter back, but it gave her something to hold on to, something to build toward, and that was enough. For now, it was enough. They were married in April, when the prairie was covered in wildflowers and the air was soft with the promise of spring. It was a small ceremony at the church in Valentine, attended by Mrs. Henderson and the mill workers and the women who had tried so hard to help Olivia in her darkest days. Olivia wore a dress of pale yellow that Mrs. Henderson had helped her make, and she carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Vincent had picked that morning. She did not wear black. She had put away her mourning clothes the day after Vincent proposed, carefully folding them and placing them in a trunk where they would stay until they were needed again. During the ceremony, when the preacher asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a long, heavy silence, and then a voice from the back of the church said, "I object." Everyone turned, and Olivia felt her blood run cold. Standing in the doorway, dirty and unshaven and reeking of whiskey, was her husband, her first husband, the man who had abandoned her and whom she had believed was long gone. "You are still married to me," he said, his words slurring slightly. "You cannot marry him. You are my wife." Vincent stepped forward, placing himself between Olivia and the man, his face hard. "You left her. You abandoned her when she was pregnant and alone. You have no claim on her." "I have every claim," the man snarled. "We are married in the eyes of God and the law. She is mine." The preacher cleared his throat uncomfortably. "I am afraid he is right. Without a legal divorce, Olivia cannot marry anyone else." Olivia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This could not be happening. Not now, not when she had finally found happiness again. She looked at Vincent, saw the fury and frustration on his face, and felt her own anger rising to match it. "I want a divorce," she said clearly, her voice ringing through the church. "I want to be free of you, Thomas. You left me. You took our money and ran off with another woman and left me to face childbirth alone. You have no right to come back here and claim me now." Thomas Davies lurched forward, and several of the mill workers stood up, forming a barrier between him and Olivia. "I have every right," he said. "You are my wife and I want you back. I made a mistake leaving you. I was scared. But I am here now and I want to make it right." "There is no making it right," Olivia said, and her voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. "You left me when I needed you most. My daughter died and you were not there. You will never be there. I do not want you back, Thomas. I want nothing to do with you. I want a divorce and I will get one, no matter how long it takes." "Divorces take time and money," Thomas said, and there was a calculating look in his bloodshot eyes now. "Unless I agree to it. I could agree to it for the right price." Vincent lunged forward, but the mill workers held him back. "You worthless piece of filth," he snarled. "You are trying to extort her." "I am trying to make a living," Thomas said with a shrug. "I need money and she wants a divorce. Seems like a fair trade to me. I will sign whatever papers need signing, but it will cost you. Let us say $500. $500 was a fortune, nearly all the money Vincent had saved for the ranch. Olivia saw him pale, saw him calculating, and she knew what he was going to do before he said it. "I will give you the money," Vincent said, his voice tight. "But you sign the papers today and you leave Valentine and never come back. If I ever see you near Olivia again, I will kill you. You understand me?" Thomas smirked. "I understand just fine, Cowboy. Get me the money and I will sign." It took 2 days to arrange everything. Vincent withdrew his savings from the bank, and the town lawyer drew up the divorce papers. Thomas signed them with a flourish, took the money, and disappeared on the next stage out of Valentine, leaving behind a wake of disgust and anger from everyone who had witnessed his behavior. Olivia was devastated. Not because of Thomas, but because Vincent had given up his dream for her, had spent the money he had saved so carefully to buy the land he wanted. "How can we get married now?" she asked, tears running down her face as they sat in the store after Thomas had left. How can I let you sacrifice everything for me? It is not a sacrifice, Vincent said firmly, taking her hands in his. You are not a sacrifice, Olivia. You are my future, and I would give up 1,000 ranches to have you in my life. The money can be saved again. The land can wait. But you, this chance with you that cannot wait, I will not let that man take anything else from you. I will not let him steal your happiness. But your dream, she whispered. The ranch, the house, everything you wanted. My dream is you, Vincent said simply. Everything else is just details. We will figure it out together, Olivia. We will build our life piece by piece, and it will be good because we will build it together. They were married a week later in the same church with the same people, and this time there were no interruptions. Olivia wore the same yellow dress and Vincent wore his best suit, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her gently, reverently, and Olivia smiled. A real smile, wide and bright and full of genuine happiness. She smiled, and the whole church erupted in applause because everyone knew what that smile meant, knew how hard one it was, knew that they were witnessing something miraculous. They moved into a small house that Vincent rented on the edge of town, a simple place with 2 rooms and a good stove, and they began their married life with almost nothing except each other. Vincent continued working at the mill, and Olivia continued working at the general store, and slowly, carefully, they began to save again. It would take years to save enough for the ranch, but they were patient, and they had each other, and that made all the difference. That first summer of their marriage was the happiest time Olivia had known since childhood. Vincent was an attentive and loving husband, always thoughtful, always kind. He never pressed her for more than she was ready to give, and when the nightmares came, when she would wake gasping and crying from dreams of grace, he was there to hold her and remind her that she was safe, that she was loved, that she would survive this. They spent their Sundays exploring the countryside, picnicking by the creek, lying in the grass and watching the clouds drift past. Vincent taught Olivia to fish, and she taught him to bake bread, and they laughed together over their failures and celebrated their successes. Slowly, day by day, Olivia's smiles came more easily. Her laughter rang out more freely, and the shadow of grief that had hung over her began to recede, not disappearing but becoming something she could live with, something that was part of her but did not define her. In October, on the anniversary of Grace's death, they went together to the cemetery and placed fresh flowers on the small grave. The meadowlark Vincent had carved stood sentinel, weathered but still beautiful, and Olivia knelt beside it, touching the headstone gently. "I am happy now, Grace," she said softly. "I did not think I would ever be happy again, but I am. I met a good man, the best man, and he loves me. I love him too. I will always love you and I will always remember you, but I am going to live my life now. I am going to be happy. I hope that is all right with you." Vincent knelt beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder. "She would want you to be happy," he said. "Any child would want that for their mother." "I know," Olivia said, and she did know deep in her bones. "I know she would. And I think, somehow, she sent you to me. I think she knew I would need someone to help me through, and she sent you." "Then I am grateful to her," Vincent said, "because you are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Olivia Reeves." Olivia turned to look at him, this man who had saved her life in every way that mattered, and she kissed him there in the cemetery, a kiss full of love and gratitude and promise. They stayed for a while longer, talking to Grace, telling her about their life, including her in their happiness because she was part of their story, part of what had brought them together. As they walked back to town hand in hand, Olivia said, "I want to have another baby someday. Not to replace Grace, because she can never be replaced, but because I still have so much love to give, and I think I am ready to try again." Vincent stopped walking and pulled her into his arms. "Whenever you are ready, I am ready. We will make a beautiful family together, Olivia. We will fill our lives with love and laughter and children who know they are wanted." "I am ready now," she said, looking up at him with eyes that were clear and bright and full of life. "I am ready to start living again, really living. I am ready to be happy." "Then let us be happy," Vincent said, and he kissed her again. There on the road back to Valentine, and Olivia felt joy bubble up inside her, pure and bright and almost overwhelming in its intensity. The following spring, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, all the old fears rushing back, but Vincent was patient and reassuring, and the women of Valentine rallied around her again, this time with hope instead of pity. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and in December of 1885, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Samuel Vincent Reeves. He came into the world howling and red-faced and perfect, and when the midwife placed him in Olivia's arms, she wept with relief and joy. Vincent held both of them, his wife and his son, and he thought his heart might burst from happiness. "You did it," he whispered to Olivia. "You did it, my love. He is perfect. We did it," Olivia corrected, smiling through her tears. "We did it together." Samuel was an easy baby, good-natured and healthy, and watching him grow gave Olivia a joy she had not thought possible. She loved him fiercely, completely, but there was also a bittersweet quality to her love, because she could not help but think of Grace, could not help but wonder what kind of child she would have been. Vincent understood, and he made sure that Grace was never forgotten, that Samuel would grow up knowing he had a sister who had come before him, a sister who was loved even though she had never lived. 2 years later, Olivia gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Alice, and their little house became chaotic and loud and full of life. Vincent had been promoted to foreman at the mill, and with the extra money, they were slowly saving toward the ranch again. It would be years yet before they could afford it, but they were patient and they were happy, and they had each other and their children, and that was more than enough. The children grew, and with them, Olivia's joy grew. She smiled easily now, laughed often, and the woman she had been in those dark days after Grace's death seemed like a distant memory, a ghost from another life. But she never forgot. Every year on Grace's birthday, they went to the cemetery as a family, and Olivia told her living children about their sister, about how much she had been wanted and loved, about how her brief existence had changed everything. "Does it make you sad?" Samuel asked one year when he was about 6, looking at his mother with solemn eyes. "Talking about her, a little," Olivia admitted, holding his hand. "But it is a good kind of sad, if that makes sense. It reminds me of how precious life is, how much every moment matters. And it reminds me of how your father saved me when I thought I could not be saved." "Papa says you saved yourself," Emma piped up. She was 4 and precocious and looked exactly like Olivia. "Papa is wise," Olivia said, smiling at Vincent, who was holding Alice on his hip. "But the truth is we saved each other. That is what people who love each other do. They save each other, over and over again, every day." By 1890, Vincent had saved enough to make a down payment on the land he had shown Olivia all those years ago. It was still available, still waiting, and they bought it with a combination of their savings and a loan from the bank. Vincent started building the house himself, with help from friends in Valentine, working evenings and weekends while still keeping his job at the mill. It took 2 years, but when it was finished, it was everything he had imagined. A sturdy ranch house with a wide porch and big windows facing east, so Olivia could watch the sunrise every morning. They moved to the ranch in the spring of 1892, and it felt like coming home. The children ran wild on the prairie, free and happy. And Olivia planted a garden and learned to raise chickens and helped Vincent with the cattle they were slowly acquiring. It was hard work, harder than anything Olivia had ever done. But it was good work, satisfying work, and at the end of each day, she and Vincent would sit on the porch and watch the sun set, the children playing in the yard, and feel a deep, abiding contentment. In 1894, Olivia gave birth to another son, James, and in 1897, their last child, a daughter they named Grace, was born. Vincent had been hesitant about using the name, worried it would be too painful for Olivia, but she insisted. "She was our first child," Olivia said, cradling the newborn in her arms. "She will always be our first child, and she deserves to have her name live on. This little Grace will know about her sister, will know that she is named after someone who was deeply loved, and that is a good thing. That is a way of making sure she is never forgotten." Baby Grace was colicky and demanding, the opposite of Samuel's easy temperament, but Olivia adored her, and watching Vincent with their daughters made her heart swell with love. He was an excellent father, patient and playful, teaching them to ride and fish and all the things his own father had taught him. The years passed, full and rich, with the ordinary joys and struggles of ranch life. There were good years when the cattle thrived and the grass was lush, and there were hard years when drought or disease threatened everything they had built. But they faced it all together, Vincent and Olivia, their partnership growing stronger with each challenge they overcame. The children grew into fine young people. Samuel was steady and responsible, taking over more and more of the ranch work as Vincent got older. The twins were bright and spirited, helping their mother with the house and garden and driving their brothers crazy with their teasing. James was quiet and thoughtful, always with a book in his hand, dreaming of becoming a teacher. And little Grace, who turned out not to be so little, grew into a beautiful, strong-willed girl who could rope a steer as well as any boy and was not afraid of anything. On Olivia's 40th birthday, in 1901, the whole family gathered on the porch for a photograph. The photographer from Valentine set up his equipment, and they arranged themselves carefully. Vincent and Olivia in the center, surrounded by their 5 children, all of them healthy and happy and loved. Before the photographer could take the picture, Samuel suddenly said, "Wait, we are missing someone." He ran into the house and came back carrying a small wooden box. Inside was the meadowlark Vincent had carved all those years ago, carefully preserved. Samuel placed it on Olivia's lap, and everyone understood. This photograph would include all of the Reeves children, even the one who had never lived. The photograph was taken, capturing a moment of perfect family unity, and when Olivia saw it later, she cried happy tears. This was her family. This was the life she had built from the ashes of her grief. This was the joy that Vincent had promised her all those years ago, when she had been too broken to believe joy was possible. That night, after the children had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Olivia and Vincent sat on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead. They were older now, Vincent's hair gray at the temples, Olivia's face lined with the marks of sun and laughter, but they were still very much in love, still partners in every sense of the word. "You remember the day we met?" Vincent asked, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. "At the funeral." "I remember," Olivia said, leaning into his warmth. "I remember thinking that I would never be happy again, that my life was over. And now I cannot imagine my life any other way. Every joy, every sorrow, every moment has led me here, to you and our children and this life we have built. I would not change any of it, Vincent, not even the hard parts, because they made me who I am and they brought me to you." "You brought yourself to me," Vincent said, kissing the top of her head. "You chose to keep living when it would have been easier to give up. You chose to let me in when you had every reason to keep your walls up. You chose happiness, Olivia. I just got lucky enough to be the one you chose." "We chose each other," Olivia said, turning to kiss him properly. "And we have been choosing each other every day since. That is what love is, I think. A choice you make over and over again to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep fighting for each other." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Olivia said, "I smiled today. A real, genuine smile. And I realize that I smile all the time now, that it is as natural to me as breathing. Do you remember when you said it was your mission to find my joy again?" "I remember." "Well, you succeeded. You found my joy, or maybe you helped me find it myself. Either way, I am joyful now, Vincent. I am happy, and I wanted to thank you for never giving up on me, even when I had given up on myself." Vincent felt tears prick his eyes, even after all these years, after all the happiness they had shared. "You never gave up on yourself," he said. "You were just lost for a while. And I am honored that I got to be the one to help you find your way back." They stayed on the porch until the stars began to fade, and the sky in the east started to lighten, that pale, almost white blue that was Olivia's favorite color. As the sun rose over their land, painting the prairie in shades of gold and amber, they held hands and watched together, grateful for another day, another chance to love each other and their family. The years continued to roll by, bringing with them the changes that time always brings. Samuel married a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch and gave Vincent and Olivia their first grandchildren. The twins both married in a double wedding that was the talk of Valentine for months. James went to college and became a teacher, just as he had dreamed, and returned to Valentine to teach at the local school. And Grace, strong-willed Grace, surprised everyone by falling in love with a quiet rancher and settling down just a few miles from her parents' ranch. Vincent and Olivia grew old together, their bodies slower and more painful, but their love as strong as ever. They spent their days watching their grandchildren play in the same fields where their children had played, tending a smaller garden now that the children were gone, and enjoying the quiet companionship that comes from decades of marriage. On a warm summer evening in 1915, when Olivia was 54 and Vincent was 58, they took their evening walk to the family cemetery they had established on the ranch. The original meadowlark from Grace's grave in Valentine had been carefully moved here years ago, along with her remains, so she could be close to the family. They visited often, sometimes bringing the grandchildren, always making sure that Grace was remembered and included in the family story. This evening they sat beside the grave, holding hands, and Olivia said, "I have been thinking about her a lot lately, about who she might have been, what she might have done." "She would have been wonderful," Vincent said, "just like all our children. I used to think that losing her was the worst thing that could happen to me," Olivia said slowly. "And it was terrible, the most terrible pain I have ever known. But now, looking back, I can see that it was also the thing that brought me to you. If she had lived, if Thomas had not left, I would never have known you. I would never have had this life, these children, this happiness. And I feel so guilty thinking that, like I am saying I am glad she died, which I am not. I would give anything to have known her, to have raised her. But I am also grateful for what came after, for the life that grew from that loss." "That is not guilt you should carry," Vincent said gently. "Grief and joy are not mutually exclusive, Olivia. You can grieve for Grace and be grateful for the life you have. You can honor her memory and still be happy. She would want that. Any child would want their mother to be happy." "I know," Olivia said, wiping away tears. "And I am happy, Vincent. I am so deeply, completely happy. You gave me that, you and Grace together in a way. She brought me to my knees and you helped me stand back up. And now look at us. Look at everything we have built." They looked around at the ranch, the house they had built with their own hands, the fields where their cattle grazed, the corrals where their grandchildren learned to ride. They looked at each other, at the lines and gray hair and all the marks of a life well lived, and they smiled. "We did good," Vincent said simply. "We did real good, Olivia." "Yes," she agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "We did." They sat there until the stars came out, talking quietly about their children and grandchildren, reminiscing about the early days of their marriage, making plans for the future even though they both knew the future was shorter now than it used to be. But that was all right. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and created a family that would carry on long after they were gone. As they walked back to the house, arms around each other, Olivia realized that she was still smiling, still finding joy in the simple act of being alive with the man she loved. The grief was still there, would always be there, a quiet ache in her heart for the daughter who never lived. But it no longer defined her. It was just one part of her story, one chapter in a life that had been full of so many chapters, so many joys and sorrows and everything in between. Vincent Reeves had made it his mission to find Olivia's joy again, and he had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. But more than that, he had shown her that joy was not something that could be given or found, but something that had to be chosen, every day, in the face of whatever life brought. And Olivia had chosen it, chosen him, chosen life, and in doing so had created something beautiful and lasting. That night, lying in bed with Vincent's arm around her and the sound of the prairie wind singing outside their window, Olivia fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of all the tomorrows still to come, all the sunrises she would watch with the man who had saved her life, simply by refusing to let her give up on herself. Vincent and Olivia Reeves lived out the rest of their days on the ranch they had built together, surrounded by children and grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. They died within months of each other in 1928, both in their late 60s, both having lived long, full lives. They were buried side by side in the family cemetery, near their firstborn daughter Grace, and the meadowlark Vincent had carved stood watch over all three graves. Their children told their grandchildren about how their mother had been so lost in grief that she had not smiled for months, and how their father had made it his mission to bring her back to life. They told them about the patience and kindness and unwavering love that had characterized their parents' marriage. They told them that love was not just a feeling but an action, a choice, a commitment that had to be renewed every single day. And the grandchildren and great-grandchildren grew up knowing that they came from a love story that had begun in the darkest of circumstances and had bloomed into something rare and beautiful. They knew that joy could be found even in the deepest grief, that love could heal the most terrible wounds, and that choosing to live, choosing to be happy, choosing to let others in, was the bravest thing anyone could ever do. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations, and though the world changed around it, the story of Vincent and Olivia remained constant. It was told around dinner tables and at family reunions, whispered to crying children as a reminder that sadness does not last forever, shared with young couples as an example of what marriage could be when two people truly committed to each other. And on quiet summer evenings, when the descendants of Vincent and Olivia sat on the porch of the old ranch house and watched the sun set over the Nebraska prairie, they sometimes swore they could hear the sound of laughter on the wind and see two figures walking hand in hand through the fields, still choosing each other, still finding joy, still very much in love even beyond the boundaries of life and death. The meadowlark Vincent had carved, weathered and worn by decades of wind and rain and snow, still stood in the cemetery, a testament to a love that had overcome grief, a symbol of how one man's simple mission to bring happiness to a grieving woman had changed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone who came after them. It reminded them all that in the darkest moments, when all seems lost, there is still hope. There is still the possibility of joy. There is still the chance for love to work its quiet miracles and make everything, somehow, worthwhile. And so the story of the woman who had not smiled since her baby was born still, and the cowboy who made it his mission to find her joy again, lived on, inspiring new generations to choose love, choose happiness, choose life, no matter how hard the journey might be. Because in the end, that choice was the only thing that really mattered, the only thing that could transform tragedy into triumph and loss into lasting legacy.